Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Councils up and down the country are figuring out how they're going to cope if the UK leaves the European Union on October the 31st without a deal. Documents seen by the BBC reveal that some authorities fear not being able to supply some foods to schools, care homes and food banks because of possible shortages or higher prices. It comes after a government report was leaked this weekend warning of potential supply problems affecting fuel, medicine and food in the event of a no-deal Brexit. Our economics editor Faisal Islam reports now from Hull.
The fully stocked shelves of one of the depots that helps feed Britain. This warehouse in Slough is one of the largest providers of food for care homes, schools, hospitals and prisons. And here they are now having to prepare yet again for no-deal Brexit and not being sure of being able to obtain some of their staples.
But a lot of this stuff, like your chopped tomatoes, your chickpeas, your baked beans, the majority of those products are manufactured in Spain or Italy, so therefore you have to import them, otherwise you won't have the volumes that you need.
Britain's food supply takes for granted these complex international supply chains.
And for central government, there is no specific problem in general about a no-deal Brexit, even a worst-case scenario. But the internal deliberations of local councils charged with delivering those services and seen by the BBC show that there are very specific concerns and some extraordinary forms of planning to keep the wheels turning.
The plans and registers of risk from around the country do echo the government assessment that higher food prices and a restriction of choice will be the main impact. But some go further, including North Tyneside, saying no deal means a high risk of increased use of tins and frozen goods and special dietary requirements being difficult to meet. North Ayrshire Council anticipating the government might need to amend school nutrition standards. In Bedford, care homes advised to hold 4 to 6 weeks' supply of non-perishable foodstuffs. And in Hastings, there's a reference to there might be the need for rationing. Councils responsible for school and care home meals were told by government earlier this year to prepare for reasonable worst-case scenarios for no-deal Brexit. These documents are the result of that exercise, and one top representative of caterers say they are necessary.
I don't believe they're going over the top. I really do believe they need to plan hard on this. So there will be an instant, I believe, where certain nutritional standards will have to be altered and adapted for a short period of time.
Because of no deal.
Because of the no deal.
Schools and hospitals?
I think they believe schools and hospitals.
Would care homes stockpile?
They will have to stockpile, yes, but it's where they've got the space to do that.
Rationing, bit over the top.
Yeah, I think rationing's a bit over the top, unless it's long term.
Back at the depot, Bidfood, one of the biggest suppliers, have meticulously gone through its 13,000 products and identified 400 at risk from a no-deal Brexit on a red, amber, green scale. They say they're ready.
We've identified the key customers, the vulnerable customers that we need to take care of, and we've got the plans in place to carry on providing a great service. There will be challenges around availability, there will be challenges around delays at ports, there will be challenges around currency fluctuations and the impact on pricing.
We've been here before. They had to buy up refrigerated warehouse capacity in March that was basically a waste of money. They will prepare again in October, but these are the big boys of the food supply industry. The question is about the smaller links in the food supply chain.
And local public services, for example the new wave of hospitals, are simply not built to hold stockpiles of food like this. The government yet to come knocking here.
At the end of the day, we are the people who deliver the product to the hospitals, the schools, the prisons, etc. And we've had no...
I'd have you on speed dial. Are you getting that proper level of engagement?
No, we've had no direct engagement with us as the person who holds the contracts with those end users.
The government reiterated it sees no impact on food supply from a no-deal Brexit, but local councils at least are privately planning for scenarios that do affect schools, hospitals, prisons and food banks. The longer any no-deal standoff with the EU lasts, the more likely they become.
So is this, Faisal, prudent planning or scaremongering on the part of councils? Public opinion is likely to be split on this.
It is sensible planning. Important to remember that this is the result of central government asking local government to plan against their scenarios. And remember, they are the key legal deliverers of these services to standards that are set very high levels and for some of our most vulnerable fellow citizens, and there are some pretty hairy things in those planning documents. It's important to kind of state that things like that reference that we saw from Hastings Council to rationing, it's not talking about wartime ration books or anything like that, but I think they would be referring to local government stopping people stockpiling. Extraordinary that we're talking about that, and I think there certainly are some viewers that will say this is not what we expected from Brexit. Others will say that this is sensible planning that helps resilience for a no-deal Brexit, and so in itself is a good thing. I think a lot boils down to this word ready. We hear people say that they're ready. That doesn't mean there isn't going to be an impact, potentially, to some of our most vulnerable fellow citizens.
OK, Faisal, thank you. Faisal Islam there, our economics editor in Hull. Well, Boris Johnson has insisted Britain will be ready to leave the European Union at the end of October, deal or no deal. But the Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has accused the government of driving the country towards a cliff edge and called for a general election so that voters can decide the country's future. Here's our political correspondent, Ben Wright.
Exactly how bad will a no-deal Brexit be?
Clutching their folders tight, ministers in charge of no-deal Brexit planning brush off questions about possible food, fuel and medicine shortages, travel disruption and protests.
Are there going to be food shortages?
No, not at all. Entirely manageable.
The details of secret Whitehall documents leaked to a newspaper yesterday and presented at a government planning meeting just 3 weeks ago. An out-of-date worst-case scenario, claim ministers, but visiting a hospital in Truro, Boris Johnson was vague about the likely disruption.
There may well be bumps in the road, but we will be ready to come out on October the 31st, deal or no deal.
The Prime Minister will meet the leaders of France and Germany this week, hoping they might yet bend and redo the existing Brexit deal.
Our friends and partners on the other side of the Channel are showing a little bit of reluctance at the moment to change their position. That's fine, I'm confident that they will. But in the meantime, we have to get ready for a no-deal outcome.
But opposition parties say a no-deal Brexit should be stopped. And to do that, Jeremy Corbyn wants MPs to bring down the government and back him as an interim Prime Minister, who would then delay Brexit and call an election.
We will do everything necessary to stop a disastrous no deal, for which this government has no mandate.
But the Lib Dems and potential Tory rebels have said they will not put Mr Corbyn in number 10.
It's clear that you do not have the cross-party support in Parliament to be a caretaker Prime Minister. So would Labour back somebody who can?
All the constitutional precedents are, when a government collapses, it's the leader of the opposition that takes over.
And he made this uncompromising appeal to MPs.
If you're serious about stopping a no-deal Brexit, then back my motion of no confidence to stop this government taking us over a cliff edge on the 31st of October.
So Jeremy Corbyn is talking today about trying to stop Brexit by working cross-party, but make no mistake, this is a Labour leader putting his party on a general election footing.
The Labour leader was in Corby, a marginal Midlands seat, setting out his plans for number 10, which is where he hopes the Brexit turmoil might take him. Ben Wright, BBC News.
Police in Northern Ireland said tonight an explosion in County Fermanagh was a trap designed to lure in and kill members of the police and army. Security services had been investigating reports of a bomb but believed it to be a hoax. When they returned to the scene this morning, another device exploded close to where they were working. No one was injured. Jeremy Corbyn today backed an early recall of Parliament to try to force a confidence vote on the government as soon as possible. The Labour leader again said he should become interim Prime Minister to try to stop a no-deal Brexit. Some of his supporters barracked journalists who tried to question him on the issue. Our reporter Angus Walker was one of those on the receiving end.
In many ways, Brexit has brought Britain to a political standstill. The headlines have hardly changed, the arguments often the same. But they were queuing in Corby today for the Labour leader to hear his plan to move things forward. Jeremy Corbyn told supporters it was time to recall Parliament and push for a general election.
I will bring a vote of no confidence in the government and if we're successful, would seek to form a time-limited caretaker administration to avert no deal and call an immediate general election so the people can decide our country's future.
But not everyone is as enthusiastic about that idea. There are even doubts within his own ranks.
Many in your own party don't see you as a person to lead a government of national unity. I just wondered...
Not a popular question.
No, let's ask his question, please. I'm defending your right to speak.
Thank you very much. Why do you think that many people within your own party don't see you as the person to lead a government of national unity to block no deal?
His answer, an appeal to other opposition parties and rebel Tory MPs.
Join me in the lobby on a motion of no confidence against this government to stop a no-deal Brexit, and I invite them to get on board and do it.
Morning.
Meanwhile, planning for no deal goes on. Ministers were meeting on Whitehall today.
Entirely manageable.
But a leaked document has revealed the government's assessment of no deal disruption. The plan, codenamed Operation Yellowhammer, predicts traffic jams and delays at borders, shortages of fresh food and fuel leading to higher prices, and medical supplies, 3/4 of which travel through the UK's main 3 ports, will be vulnerable to extended delays.
What did you do, jump off a cliff or something?
No, he was...
So it's the Prime Minister visiting a hospital in Cornwall today who's accused of taking Britain to the edge of a cliff.
There may well be bumps in the road, but we will be ready to come out on October the 31st, deal or no deal.
But Boris Johnson's best bedside manner may not cure the outbreak of fears over Brexit disruption and won't prevent the operation to stop him leaving without a deal.
Angus, let's return to talking about Jeremy Corbyn. He chose Corby, a marginal seat that Labour are targeting. Is that another hint that another election is on its way?
Well, yes, Jeremy Corbyn's speech today felt like a campaign launch. It was packed with manifesto-style promises. He said that an election would be a crossroads for our country, but politically it still feels more like spaghetti junction. Lots of ifs and buts. Labour's policy on Brexit itself not entirely clear, saying they're committed to a second public vote with the choice of Remain, but the alternative would be a credible option. Not entirely clear what that credible option would be, and the government is not entirely clear of what will happen in the event of no deal, saying today that free movement for EU citizens would end if we leave without a deal. That's fresh uncertainty there. More ifs and buts. And if we're relying on MPs, a coalition of opposition MPs, to find a fresh route out of Brexit, well, then even a general election might not bring the sort of clarity that voters seek.
Thanks, Angus.
Now, Britain will be ready to leave the EU by the 31st of October, with or without a deal, Boris Johnson claimed again today, despite the emergence of a leaked government document called Operation Yellowhammer and named after the bird, warning about the potential consequences. Meanwhile, his Home Secretary, Priti Patel, was spelling out exactly what that no-deal outcome might mean. Border restrictions to be imposed the very moment Brexit happens. Opponents said that idea was completely detached from reality. Simon Israel has this report.
But look what you've done. You've met the Prime Minister.
You'd be forgiven for thinking an election is around the corner. Snappers, Prime Minister, hospital, children's ward, all the classic ingredients of political campaigning.
This ward looks pretty good to me.
No, it's the windows.
Oh, yeah.
Winter, the wind and rain comes through the windows.
On the surface, a chance to urge more take-up on MMR child vaccination rates, but also yet another chance to reinforce a no-deal exit in the face of predictions of chaos under civil service plans dated August the 1st to prepare the UK.
I'm not pretending that there won't be bumps on the road. There will be. I said that on the steps of Downing Street. But if everybody puts their minds to it, I have absolutely no doubt that we can get ready.
According to Operation Yellowhammer, leaked to the Sunday Times, those bumps include shortage of fresh food, fuel and medicines, coupled with panic buying and congestion at ports and airports. Add to that today's reports that the Home Secretary Priti Patel will close the borders after October the 31st to EU citizens seeking work as freedom of movement ends. No plans have yet been unveiled for any proposed visa system that would replace it. And an estimated 2.5 million EU residents in the UK have yet to apply for settled status.
If we end our legal relationship without replacing it with a new system, then we're going to have legal chaos. And this then brings into picture the whole issue of Windrush. Only this time it won't be affecting hundreds of people, it will be affecting potentially hundreds of thousands of people.
He says if the government doesn't get it right, he predicts a tsunami of litigation. The Home Office said no one eligible for settled status would be barred from re-entering the country once the doors had closed, so to speak. But how any visa system could distinguish between them and other Europeans remains unanswered. The Home Office simply said improvements to previous plans are under development. So, you might argue, is Labour's opposition to a no deal. Jeremy Corbyn today outlined a plan for a caretaker government.
I will bring a vote of no confidence in the government, and if we're successful, would seek to form a time-limited caretaker administration to avert no deal and call an immediate general election so that people can decide our country's future.
There were jeers too from some in his audience of loyal followers when a journalist asked if the Labour leader would step aside in such circumstances to avoid a no deal.
Would that include potentially stepping aside as leader of that caretaker government?
Beyond the politics, Brexit still poses some very real problems, with 73 days to go, and immigration is one of the biggest.
Simon is reporting. Well, joining me now here is Joe Owen from the Institute for Government and from the campaign group for EU citizens in the UK, the 3 million, Hedvig Hectormans. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Hedvig. How worried are you by what's just been said by the government?
Well, it is very worrying, and it's not just me, but there are a lot of worried EU citizens out there. Because by this move, it seems that the government is creating two groups of EU citizens that are indistinguishable, like your colleague in the report just mentioned.
And you personally have been here since 2001?
2001, yes. Although I have already applied and received settled status.
Right.
So I'm a little bit less worried, but because EU citizens have been given the time until 31st of December 2020 to apply for settled status when there is no deal, I wonder how can people then distinguish after the 31st of October?
And when the Prime Minister Boris Johnson says that, you know, EU citizens who've been here are unambiguously welcomed, embraced, do you believe him?
Well, that is undone now by the reports today by the measurements Priti Patel is wanting to take. So it's a very worrying time since the referendum already. So more than 3 years now, we live in worrying times, and this is certainly not helpful.
Joe, only 8 weeks left before we leave, probably without a deal. Is Hedvig right to be worried?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, to put this in context, the last time there was a major change to government immigration policy, it was 4 years from the point it was designed to being rolled out. We waited 2 years for the immigration white paper that arrived last year. Now, with kind of 8 weeks or so to go and having a policy that we don't really know yet, we haven't got the details on, businesses don't know, citizens don't know, but somehow it will be in place by the 31st of October.
And given the fact that we have so little time left and there's so little clarity, is it possible that this is just, you know, dog whistle politics from the government? A bit of rhetoric, some words.
Well, it's very difficult to say. I mean, the Cabinet Committee that this decision came out of was the government's no-deal daily Cabinet meeting focused on readiness for October the 31st. Now, if they are using that meeting to reinvent old policies with just 8 weeks left and try and change the game, then it doesn't bode well for the government talking serious about being ready for no deal if they are reopening these huge policy decisions with so little time left.
So given the fact that we only have, 73 days, what does the reality actually look like if we don't get legislation, you know, to regulate immigration? We crash out without a deal on the 31st of October. What does the reality then look like for people like Hedvig?
So the reality can look very simple. This is one of the confusing things about this policy decision, is that where all of the other areas where there is disruption in a kind of cliff edge, as you say, on the 31st of October, the government can just say free movement will continue until our new system is up and running at the end of January 2021. And there would be no big change required.
That might be politically unacceptable, then.
It's politically unacceptable, but there are a lot of things that are politically unacceptable and unavoidable when you get to no deal. Direct rule in Northern Ireland, bailout funds for businesses. If the government's serious about readiness, then it needs to apply the same approach to immigration it has in other areas, which is prioritising continuity.
Hedvig, I mean, you've got your settled status, you've gone through the process. Why are you still worried? I mean, that spells out quite clearly your status after the 31st of October.
That's true, but it's not just me. There are so many people, of course, are according to their own governments.
So how many have got...
They said about 100 million people have applied and been granted either
1 million.
settled or pre-settled.
No, not 100 million.
No, 1 million.
That's 1 million, okay, right.
So 1 million have applied and received either settled status or pre-settled status.
Right.
That leaves more than 2 million people with just 8 weeks ago. So that is a worry. And also the whole settled status scheme is based on secondary legislation. Right. So things can change very easily without scrutiny in Parliament.
Should the government just be, getting hold of these 2 million people, putting out in much more of a public information campaign to say, get a move on? Because it's, once you get on to it, it's quite quickly. It's quite efficient, it's quite quick to be done.
It's actually really difficult to get all of those people to register, not least because there are legitimate reasons why they won't. They don't have access to computers. They don't know that they need to apply. There's whole groups of vulnerable people who it will be really difficult, which is why the Home Office has been so careful about design.
We're talking about 2 million people. I mean, they must do something.
So the
message has got to get out there somehow.
They will have to push out messages in this part of this big communication campaign. Is there a world where they get to anywhere near 100%? It's very, very unlikely if you look at other schemes around the world.
Hedvig, are you worried that if this isn't sorted out, you could become part, or the other 3 million could become part of a new Windrush generation in Europe?
Windrush on steroids, absolutely. And because the whole system of applying, it's not a registration system, it's an application system. The whole system of applying actually can make people unlawful resident overnight. And other than with the Windrush, who were here legally but had lots of problems proving that fact, EU citizens could become unlawful residents, which is it's a very dire situation to be in.
Hedvig Hectormans, Joe, thank you very much indeed. John.
The Prime Minister has been speaking to his Irish counterpart today, Leo Varadkar, by telephone this evening. As well as discussing plans for Brexit, the two leaders also addressed this morning's explosion in County Fermanagh. Northern Ireland police say dissident Republicans are to blame for the blast near the Irish border, which they called a reckless and indiscriminate attempt to murder police officers. Jane Death has this report.
An ongoing security operation after a bomb near the border. The police service of Northern Ireland believes dissident Republicans tried to kill police and army officers this morning.
Today we've seen another example of the intent dissident Republicans have as they attempted to murder police officers and army personnel in County Fermanagh. They are reckless and indiscriminate, and this morning's attack had the potential to kill anyone in the immediate vicinity. I am of the firm belief it was a deliberate attempt to lure police and army bomb disposal colleagues into the area to murder them.
The attack was in County Fermanagh, near the border with the Republic of Ireland. On Saturday evening, police received a report that a suspect device had been left in the area of Wattle Bridge. Officers carried out an operation to clear the area on Sunday. That device was declared a hoax. But as bomb disposal officers and police were reviewing the scene this morning, another device exploded nearby. The PSNI said today it believes the bomb was probably left by the Continuity IRA or the new IRA. There have now been 6 attempts to murder police officers already this year. A viable device was found last month in Craigavon in County Armagh, meant for officers responding to a call, police believe. In June, a police officer discovered a bomb under his car at a golf club in East Belfast. The new IRA claimed responsibility. And there was the murder of the journalist Lyra McKee, shot by a gunman as she stood near a police vehicle during rioting in Londonderry. Today's bomb has been condemned by Northern Ireland's main political parties and the UK and Irish governments. The Deputy Chief Constable of the PSNI warned against taking peace for granted, naming uncertainty over Brexit and the lack of a government in Northern Ireland as two of many tensions, and calling on Northern Ireland's politicians to make progress as well as rejecting violence.
To actually say, you do not represent the type of society we want to live in, and we want to reclaim, actually, the prosperity that I think we all felt a number of years ago. But many of us, and certainly people have reflected to me, sense that things are becoming more entrenched and progress that had been made is maybe slipping back a little bit.
The PSNI says it's fighting small groups of determined and dangerous people who wake up every day wanting to murder police officers. It says with MI5's help it's constraining their efforts, but today's bomb shows how close they can come.